Let's add a few more colors to our work and learn what are warm and cool colors. We've had three colors up to this point: dark, mid-tone, and light. I've so far told you to ignore what hue you're using. I'm not going to get too deep into hues yet, but I want to introduce you to two types of colors: temperature and luminosity. Before I do, I want to clarify a few things. First of all, I'm colorblind. I have the most common form of color blindness. Even if you're colorblind like me, color temperature and luminosity still work. I often use the palette we discussed for larger works. Secondly, color perception is very subjective. So colorblind or not, you or your audience may have different perceptions, though there are some general rules. For those reasons, I'll talk in terms of color ranges like red, orange instead of specific colors. Adjust to your taste, but learn the principles. So I'm going to open a new canvas here, and if you look at the charcoal palette I usually have here, you'll see that there are two dark colors and two darker midtones. And the ones on the left here, so let me tap on one of those, are based on the red-orange hues. Colors with hues in a range around this are known as warm colors. So let's tone a page with some warm tone. So I'm going to close this up for the minute, and I'm going to go over here to my layers, and I'm going to add a few layers here, just so that I have them. And I'm going to start here down on layer 1, which I'm going to rename warm. Alright, I'll zoom out a little bit here. And what I'll do is I'm going to take my brush, and we're just going to tone the paper here like we've done in the past. So I've got the darkest color here. So I'm just going to do on the bottom here a swipe of dark color. And then I'm going to take this brown color here and put a swipe of that. Just for fun, I'm going to do a little bit of erasing on top here. And now go ahead with my blender, which is set at 100 and 100. And just blend those together so we get a gradient. And you can do a little school in here too to get a better gradient. But you can see we've got a gradient going here. Now when you look at these colors, what do you think? You know, I'm thinking of toasted marshmallows, maybe a warm blanket, maybe the horizon during a forest fire. Now do the same with the second set of colors. So I'm going to go back over here to layers. I'm going to hide this by checking off the warm. And then we go to layer 2 here. I'm going to rename this to cool. And I'm going to do the same thing I just did. Okay. And so I'll go back over here to my colors. And I'll start with the dark cool color here. And at 100%. And then I'll go to the next color. And give it a swipe. And I left enough space up there that I don't really need to erase. So I'm just going to take my blend and smudge that all together. Maybe pull a little bit more in there. And we get a gradient of cool colors. And now when you look at these colors, what do you think? I'm thinking of an early winter morning here. Now these are the cool colors. So let's go back into the color wheel here on our color. Hues that are on these red-orange ranges, like the one we have up here, tend to be warmer. Now directly opposite that, we have the green-blues, and those are going to be much cooler in color. So now we're going to try doing the same thing with, instead of a background, with an actual foreground. So let's do some cups so that we can see how this would look on an actual object. So I'm going to close that up. And let's go ahead and go to layer 3 here. And I'm going to rename that Cups 1. Okay, and I'm going to hide my layers for now. We'll play back with them a little bit. Let's do one warm and one cool. So I'm just going to go over here. And I'm going to start with my warm colors. And I'll start with this color here. I'll bring down my brush size a bit. And just do what we've done before. As I'm just going to do a simple cup shape like that. Okay. And I'll just start blending some colors in. Maybe I'll take a little of the opacity down a bit. Bring up my brush. just brush in some color. And then brush in the dark color. And so now I put in my warm dark. And I can just blend that together. I'll bring down the size of my brush to about 12. And just blend that out like so. I'm going to add just a little bit more on the edge here. Okay, we got ourselves a nice little cup. Nothing too exciting. You know, you could actually erase a little bit of the edge there just to straighten it out a bit. There's my cup. Maybe I'll add a little bit of dark over here and a little bit of erasure over here. Actually, I'm going to use some white for here so we can do some backgrounds later and just blend it between the two. There. There you go. Okay, so we got a cup. Now that's a warm cup. Now I'm going to do the same thing with a cool cup. I just made a nice little cup there, and we'll do exactly what we did before. I'll bring down the opacity, maybe bring up my brush a little, put in a couple of that, bring down the brush, add a little color, and then put in the dark. Like that. Okay, and again, we'll just quickly make this up. And we can start to compare these two cups. Again, what do these things make you think of? The one on the left seems to mean it probably have coffee in it, and the one on the right seems to have ice water. You could sort of get that feeling of temperature just from the color itself. We're making associations with color. A cold lake or a steel structure will be cool colors. A human being or an animal will probably be in the warm colors that we have on the left. You could do this with whites as well. I'm going to go back to my dark cool color here, like I have here, and I'm going to add some whites in that are actually cool colors. And the way I do that is I just take the middle slider here, and I'm going to move it to somewhere around 11 o'clock here. And on my cool colors, and I'll start over here, I'll bring down the brush a little. I'm going to add a little bit of this cool white, okay, and then I can blend that in. And I'm going to do the same thing over here on the side here. Let's get to the brush. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the white here and blend that in. And that still gives you a nice cooler color than you would get with the white that we have already. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now I put a little of the neutral white here, so I'm going to do the same thing here, but I'm going to go over here, because it's somewhere around 11 o'clock, and just pull in some of this white. And this one we've got the white is a little bit over a bit, so I'm going to use the same spot that I've got already. And then blend that up. And again, you can see it's got a little bit of the tone in it, so it gives it a little bit more warmth as a white compared to a pure white that we were using before, which is neutral. So we have two cups now that are all cold colors and warm colors. Now there's one more thing about the two colors I used for warm and cool, and they are complements. So let's take a look at color wheel again, which mean they work well together. And so things that are absolutely on the opposite of each other on the color wheel, so we've got, for example, this color and this color, they work very well together as far as complements in terms of their hue. So you can actually start adding pieces to your puzzle here of colors by using one cool color and maybe two warm colors. is as you are making the tones that you're working with. I'll give you an example of this, is you can start by changing your backgrounds. So let's go here. I'm going to add on the warm background and see what happens. And you can see how that looks very different and how it conveys the picture a lot differently between these two cups when you have a warm background. And definitely the cool color stands out more because of the complement. On the same way, let's go over here to cool. You could see that the warm cup stands out even more on the cool colors. So you may want to use your backgrounds that way. And of course you can combine these two as well. So let's do one more here. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to turn off all of that. And I'm going to go to layer 4. And I'm going to rename that combined cup. And I'll make one more cup here. And we'll start with a warm color. Okay, so there's our coffee cup. And I'll use this as my mid-tone. So I'm going to leave this alone. I'll pop this up. Throw some color in there. I got a little too much on the side here. All right, and I'll put, instead of a shadow that's warm, I'm going to use a shadow that's cool. And that's too big, so let's go back. And I'm going to use a cool shadow, like that. And I can start to blend this up a bit. And I think I'll use a warm white in here too. Now let's get the top here. So we'll come down on our size. I'm just going to put in the dark and put in the light. Okay, and so we've got ourselves a nice looking piece here. I might mess with the shadow a little bit more, but you get the idea. Now I can go ahead and look at that on my cool background and my warm background, and you can see that it's pulling up colors differently, and so you can get a much different look from it by using different colors. Now there's one more color I want to talk about. There's another attribute of color, the luminosity, and so let's go back into our color wheel here again. The colors that we've discussed so far are very dark, and so everything there except white is really a dark color, and you can see that here. It's all on that bottom half of the middle circle. And we haven't talked about anything on the upper half, or that there's this thing called luminosity, that the actual colors on the color wheel are brighter just by their own nature. And the ones that are of most important to us are also neutral. And so if you were to take a line so that you get your complements together, and then make a perpendicular line, you'd find somewhere in the yellow greens a color that is extremely bright, somewhere over here, that also is neutral. It's not warm and it's not cold. There's another one over here, but it's not as bright as the one over here. And I'm interested in that bright one. So it's a yellow-green of some kind. Now what we're going to do with that yellow-green is I can now use that as a way of making a brighter color and making things shine a little bit more. So I'm going to just take this yellow here, and I'm also going to move this to about 1 or 2 o'clock on the color wheel so that we have full saturation. I've been using a low brightness but a medium saturation for many of these colors. Now I'm going to be using a high brightness so that this really stands out, so it's fluorescent. And you can see what happens when I use it on my brush here. Is I'll go in here and I'll just swipe in a little bit. You can see that's extremely powerful. It's too much, really. You're going to use this mostly for blends, and so you're going to really blend that up a bit to give you a bigger blend on things so that you can get effects like this, where the white itself is not the only highlighting color. Okay, so you can get effects like this, or you might start making things glow a bit. So I often will have a low opacity on this, and I'll blend those low opacities so that we can have some interesting color effects here. And so you can start blending these in. I'm just going to do some circles here, and now I'll bring this up and then blend that back in, and it gives you some more color, some more flair to your pieces. And those are neutral colors, so they work with both the warms and the cools. There's a lot of possibilities in just these few shades. For your challenge, you're going to download and add the new palette I'll be using, which has all these new colors called Warm and Cool Colors. It has warm and cool colors plus the high luminosity color. Pick one of the earlier challenges and redo them using these colors. I've put a few reference photos on the lesson webpage if you want to use one of those. I used this image that you're going to become very familiar with over the next 2 lessons, where I'm going to show you how I did this. We've got a while until we get to more color, but this will give you a very useful palette for drawing and sketching while creating a mood with just a few colors.